So, welcome to today's episode. How are you, Stellan?
I am very well, thank you. And you?
I'm good. And Anders?
Tremendous.
Nice. You have a nice background, Anders. What's the story behind that bookshelf or what it is?
It's actually locker rooms lockers in wood.
Mm-hmm.
And then over there, you see one of my hunting trophies. I actually carved this trophy from one of the trees that I took down the other year. So it's not a real head, it's something that I carved.
Hmm.
I've always liked to carve things.
An unknown skill.
Yeah.
For me,
And is it true or
what do you mean?
that you have carved it?
No, that's just a lie. I bought it for 5 Swedish kroner
Mm-hmm.
in a store somewhere nearby. But it's a good story.
Nice. A good store and a good story. And we are recording this in the end of June, and I thought we could have an episode reflecting on the last 6 months and talk a bit what you two have done like during these 6 months, and if you have done any experiments, you can talk about those conclusions that you have drawn. But starting with you, Stella, like when we were in beginning of January, do you think, like, if you reflect on how your previous 6 months has been, was it like you thought back then?
Ooh, 6 months flies fast.
Don't get too personal now, Stellan. Don't go there.
Um, I think from an overall standpoint, I think everybody thought COVID vaccinations would move much faster than they have actually done. And as a consequence, I think many people were thinking like, come spring, we can go about our lives as we used to, and that hasn't really come to a fruition yet. So I'm I'm thinking enough time has now passed to sort of have this sort of new normal perspective on things, meaning that yes, we will go back to going to concerts and going to restaurants and stuff like that, but um, business wise, there will be less travel, and there will be less time spent in offices. And then the sort of, details of that is yet to iron out. And it is for Zooma as well. We're in progress of figuring out our future office. Um, so I would say, like, a lot of like, thinking back, this is the sort of number one reflection that you get. And then on a more like practical note, I think it's clear that many more companies, as a consequence, are thinking about sort of the whole of their let's say relationship stack. We could call it. Um, like, how do we keep track of conversations that are ongoing with customers and prospects, and make sure that we sort of nurture them in a good way, and ultimately, as Anders used to say, how do we get all data on one contact card? I think that's a discussion that is becoming more frequent,
Mm?
and also how you make sense and use of, like, practically, of a lot of the buzzwords that have been thrown around. Um, that I think is, yeah, those would be my top three.
Yeah, we'll get back to those three. But first, Anders, what's your main reflections of the past 6 months?
the first thing that I thought about before I started listening to Stellan was, I mean, we all live in an experiment right now. And when you do experiment, it's a lot up to your ambition. If you look at the others trying to sort of experiment, if you get involved, if you contribute to the experiment with your own theories and test them, meanwhile someone is mixing up something or whatever it is. I hope I'm wrong, but I think when people are not as isolated, when more have taken the vaccine and so forth, I think that I might conclude in a while that shit, people did not use the time possible for reflection, for change, for moving forward, for experimenting and doing everything else. And that I say at the same time, I think we some days before I go to bed, I think, we've been too slow. We had a fantastic, or have a fantastic and unique possibility, opportunity to change things in a direction where we want them, and so on. And some other days, I just think, ooh, we have done many things since March 2020. And then at the end, when I listened to Stellan, I thought this is an experiment as well. What we're doing here, with our colleagues, with the four of us, and everyone else, we're doing a lot of experiments, and they are also driven by the thought that we have been explaining before. No one, as a prospective supplier, is credible if you haven't done it on yourself. If you haven't been experimenting and living what you claim that you sort of are driven by, then very, very difficult. So a lot of reflections, and perhaps not a stringent answer on January to now. I think the four of us who's been participating a lot in the pod needs to remember that this is an experiment as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And Stella, you mentioned that figuring out buzzwords has been one task. I'm curious, like in the end of 2020, were there any new buzzwords that was around which you have worked with during this 6 months, or
Yeah, it's definition of what is new, but definitely last year changed focus for many. So just the fact that we're now doing a pod is one change for us. So is it like a buzzword? Well, it's been around for a very long time, but have many like companies used it the way we now do? No, to a much less degree. So, and I agree with Anders, and I think like this that we're doing is an experiment. We don't know where it will take us, but we do know that we learn from it, and that that will sort of make us be able to make more um, thoughtful decisions for Zooma and for customers as a consequence. So so yes, so the pod is one thing. Um, Consequently, another thing we're doing is webinars, and we've done a couple now. We've done trainings, and as well, and we are learning from all of them. So I think
could you share us some learnings about the webinar, for example?
so I think one thing is how you invite, and also how you follow up afterwards for the people who weren't there. I know especially about one of the invitations. I know that Anders reached out through LinkedIn. Was a very different response rate through LinkedIn compared to sending emails. And I think that's one thing which is important to pick up and to build from, and to also help customers understand how you can leverage existing relationships to share great content, and also how you can do prospecting with sharing great content.
Yeah, yeah. And that's one example of experiment you have done, Anders. Could you just share any other type of experiments you have tried out during the 6 months?
Just to put it in a context, I personally will not think of that our experiment with this pod is ever over. But if we look at the pod, it started based on that you took an initiative. You said that you missed the conversations in the office where you sort of move your headset and you listen to a discussion between 2 or 3 colleagues. Um, we can look at that as an experiment and say a colleague had a wish and we said yes, hey ho, let's go. To that we added that we will record them, and in the beginning we started recording with Zoom, and now we record with Zencast, and then we said, oh, now when we have video, perhaps we should make short intros to use mainly on LinkedIn to make people aware of that it exists. And then we did a promo of how to get subscribers on the site. And in the beginning, we had SoundCloud, and then we changed it. We add Spotify, and most likely Doug very soon will add more. And then someone came up with the idea that let's use the transcription for SEO reasons, where we put the article about the pod on the Onlinification hub. And then someone had an idea that let's use the transcriptions and try to create Swedish articles based on our conversations in Swinglish here. So that's a long list of things, um, and I'm certain that in a while we will add more things to those, and we will package them, and we will provide them as a well-proofed, tested best practice for our customers, and perhaps even if we start to work with some new company this year or next year, if we have a place for them. And then a last spin. I started saying I don't think this experiment is sort of, I don't remember what I said, ready or ongoing until uh, everyone in Zooma has participated at least one time. I can tell you that one of our colleagues, Charlotte, who's a fantastic and spiritual person, when we recorded videos at the end of 2020 to publish on no, the end of 2019, I think,
Yeah.
to publish them on social media and on LinkedIn, and perhaps use on sort of sections on the site and so on. She wasn't comfortable at all to make a video. Perhaps you remember Alexander, and P. She was involved, but today she's a TV host. She could have her own program about anything. She's sort of behaving exactly like in real life when she's in video meetings, when she's on video, when she's recording for our Instagram with book tip of the week. The part of doing experimentation is to make people feel comfortable, and in their own tempo and in their own steps do things. We have other colleagues who didn't want to, another colleague who didn't want to participate in a video that we were doing. She did not feel comfortable about it at all. She did participate. She's still not satisfied with the result. She doesn't strive to do this. But experimenting is also about sort of helping each other over, to come over things if we want to go there. My hope is that everyone in Zooma has participated at least once in the pod before this year is over. The responsibility for that, the DRIs of that, is Alexander and Doug. Make it happen.
Yeah. You take that as an order.
You very seldom have a problem with me and Stellan that we give two short answers like yes and no and other.
So these were some of your like personal reflections. I'm just curious how the conversation with clients and other companies have what has been the talk during the 6 months, Anders?
What do you mean? What's been the talk?
No, but do you see any like shift in the conversation or the request that Zooma gets regarding onlinification? Has 2020 changed the mindset of decision makers you talk to and so on?
Most of the companies that we work with and that work with us, that we partner with, I would say have come pretty far, especially when it comes to the intentions. And many of them started digitalizing, onlinifying very long before the pandemic or COVID-19. But I would definitely say two things. Oi, 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 how much more comfortable people are in having video meetings and how to run meetings and how to distribute who's going to talk or say something, interact, use the chat. Um, Most people would laugh about their own behavior March 2020 if they had a possibility to look at it in June 2021. That's one thing. And secondly, I would say for the companies that we work with, they think way more commercially, and they think way more like Stellan said in the beginning of this episode today, that they don't know exactly how to phrase it, but what they mean is that we want to become an intelligent company who have a coordinated and aligned view internally of what the customer wants and what they do and how they've been interacting and so on. That I definitely say. And perhaps one more reflection or reality is that I think many have realized the extremes of working from home. That doesn't sort of go exactly for our customers, but if I'm sort of very general, uh, some long back so much to the real business life of having it cozy in the office, sit on a plane, drive in a car, real meetings. I'm actually right now, based on that, I got a direct order from Stellan to write an article about it yesterday. I have a long article ongoing about this. And then the other extreme is that they have done studies with their colleagues and asked how many that wants to be working 0 to 5 days from home. And they have realized that, oi, it will be an empty office. We still have the office, but most of the time it will be an empty office. So the two extremes among companies are really extreme. And I think actually during this whole period, it has been the same from day one. Some have adapted temporarily, and some have adapted permanently to how the world has changed.
Yeah. And Stella, now we will follow up on this, but when you get your second dose of vaccine, how do you think your life is gonna change after that? From it, what it has been this 6 months.
I think well, it won't change, how we go about our daily lives, except in two things, I think. And number one is having more people over. So having conversations and dinners with people, with friends that's yeah, we haven't been able to have. And then the second one is travel.
Yeah.
And by that I don't mean business travel, I mean private travel. And those are the two things, because yeah, as you could see, I got my eldest son for a short visit, and they've been going about their school and so on, exactly like nothing happened for the past 1.5 years. So that has been sort of a let's say an element of normality in what have otherwise been yeah, working from home, and you know, avoiding stores, avoiding physical spaces, avoiding going on public transit, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for participating today.
Thank you.
Before I say thank you, Alexander, I just had an SMS from Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of emojis here. He's so happy because now we have promised him that when we launch the book this autumn, his company will be the second distributor of the book in the world. So funny. He's so happy now. I have never ever received a SMS or a text with so many emojis. So good
Wow.
good for you, Jeff. But you need to sell to keep the possibility to sell it. So thank you, Alexander.
Thank you very much. See you.